what is some alpha that you might be able to drop?
A lot of rumors. There's a lot on the horizon outside of all of that. I don't want to get too much into the merger and acquisition rumors that Beanie is fueling, but the development on Wolf Game is not stopping. Even in the event that something like that were to happen, Wolf Game is not going away. Wool is not going away. I think those assurances are really important. I wouldn't let any rumors strike fear into the heart of Wolf Gamers. On the horizon, we've got tournaments and events on the peak. We, of course, have the Slope and the Summit opening up much more regularly. There are updates coming to the farm. This idea of seasonality is something that is shared by the shepherd. There's a lot to come.
Welcome to Beyond the Den. I'm your host, Digital Optimist. In today's episode, we're joined by Zaahmbie, a seasoned digital strategist who has made an impressive transition into Web3 business development and partnerships. His journey spans from Apple Retail, Wolverine Worldwide, to Miller Knoll, cultivating invaluable experiences along the way. Zaahmbie now harnesses his expertise to shape the future of Web3 gaming, contributing significantly to both Wolf Game and InfiniGods. We delve into his fascinating journey, uncover insider perspectives on these intriguing Web3 projects, and even tease some exclusive alpha. You're in for a treat with this episode, so sit tight and let's dive in. So super stoked to have you on. I've been kind of following you since the beginning of Wolf Game, and seeing you blossom has been really fun. Tell me a little bit about Wolf Game and how you got started. You are now part of the business development team, correct?
Yeah, we more recently made the change publicly that I would be that sort of doxed face for the team. Yeah, to your point, I've been there from day one. I found it the same way many people found it, a tweet from Beanie. And actually, it was shared into a stock trading Discord that I was part of at the time. And so it was a relatively early foray for me into minting. I'd done a few different mints here and there, but Wolf Game was one that I think really captivated me from the start. And obviously I got involved in a big way from the very beginning.
So when you say captivated, can you give me some examples?
Yeah, I think what attracted most people to Wolf Game originally, that idea that there was real risk involved, there was a game from the start, was really intriguing. For me and for a lot of the people that came at that time, I wasn't so much struck by the tokenomics. I'm not a tokenomics guy, but I really liked this notion that I was able to mint more from this Genesis piece. And at the same time, I had the opportunity to get something that was worth quite a bit more monetarily. And that's what I was in it for. I came into the space for the money, like I think a lot of people did during that really intense bull market that we had. And so for me, watching people essentially make life-changing amounts of cash on wool, on minting wolves, that was really hard to ignore.
Yes, so true. So what was the first animal that you actually purchased?
I had so low liquidity that I bought one sheep at mint. And then the day after, when they went real low, like 0.03 or something like that, I bought another one. And I still have both of those. I definitely still have one of them, but that was it. That's all I had. And then from there, I worked my way up to several different wolves. I still got those sheep. But I'm a pretty minimalist when it comes to my NFT collection in Wolf Game. I'm more of a wool maxi.
Yeah. There's a
these days.
Yes, yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of individuals that are one or the other. You have the woolionaires, right? So they're real heavy in wool. That's their play. Or you have the ones that tend to gravitate towards the assets, the wolves, the sheep, the farmers, the land. And I would say that originally I was in the camp of the assets. I just being attracted to the sheep and wolves, they were just such a cool look. Then the farmers, it's, the diesels, those really spoke to me. The inner meathead in me.
You can't go wrong with the compounding nature of the game pieces. I think that is what makes Wolf Game compelling today, is that idea that owning more of these things results in a higher yield, a higher output from the gameplay.
Yeah, definitely. It's an indirect way to invest in wool, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
because essentially you're gaining more resources, which in turn you can turn around on even the secondary market and push into chops or push into wool. So it's really cool, and just the game mechanics and how everything comes full circle. It really is amazing. So there's so many different plays, which tends to, I think, confuse the outsiders, right? When they see so many balls up in the air regarding jumping into an ecosystem, those people outside the Wolf game ecosystem, and even the InfiniGod system, I haven't delved too deep into the InfiniGod system because of that. It's almost like, whoa, there's a lot of moving parts here. And, I just want to
Yep.
make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So what would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, I think that's just part of the relatively complex nature of this space in this moment. It still is nascent technology, right? Like NFTs are not ubiquitous. Certainly the term is, but actual digital ownership is not very widespread. And everything feels very high context. It's easy to get wrapped up in like the
Mm.
one project that you've invested some money in. You learn it deeply and intimately, and it's really hard to even imagine branching out to another ecosystem. Like why would you, right? Like if you've
Hmm.
got all this money tied up, you've got these assets, you've learned to play the game. The barrier then is learning another game. We just had this conversation with the Forgotten Runes team. If you tuned into our space, the Game Changers space with Forgotten Runes and Board Elon, I'm sure there's a recording on Twitter. We talked about the complexity of board games, and I think that applies not just to Wolf Game, which I've called a blockchain board game, but to these ecosystems. Everyone has a white paper. These white papers are loaded with details. There are different barriers for entry and different hoops that you need to jump through to participate, and a different willingness from the players in any one of these sort of gamified ecosystems to do that. You
Hmm.
look at Wolf Game with its wallpaper, the peak paper, different rules for each of the games that you play on the peak, and then a revolving meta that you really only understand if you're participating both by playing and in the Discord server. You look at Yuga and what they've got, which is like several different games now. Heavy Metal, the brand new game, I don't even know how to play it. I understand it's a resource management game, which is not unlike Wolf Game, but certainly theirs is more, I think, involved than Wolf Game. You really have to tap into that every single day. Where Wolf Game, you don't necessarily have to do that. So there's a different level of dedication expected. Something like InfiniGods, we've got our passes and our gods, and now we've got 3 games announced with maybe some more on the way. And
Hmm.
it can feel very intimidating. What I am very attracted to in this moment, as I think about the companies that are doing it well and in my opinion doing it right, is that they're building these games that are relatively easy to play. You look at the peak, Hex is like grown up tic-tac-toe. Wolfwitz is a card game with only 16 cards, right? Everyone has the same 8 cards when they start. It's arguably easier than Uno to play Wolfwitz, but there's more nuance to the strategy and maybe the skill involved.
Hmm.
But like InfiniGods, we've got a tower defense game. We're working on mobile games, right? These are things that people can pick up, that have some familiarity with, and then they can dive as deeply into the meta as they choose. So doing it simply, I think is the way to do it. And I think looking for that simplicity is the easiest way to onboard yourself into these environments. So, whether that's KOD, King of Destiny, the new InfiniGods game on your iPhone or your Google device, your Android device, whether that's playing the Peak, those games you can jump in and out of. I think where it gets more complicated is saying like, I really enjoyed that experience. What's next for me? And that's where like you become this guy that comes over to your friend's house with a new board game. You bust out this huge ass instruction manual, and you're like, "Let me read to you. Let me explain how to play this game." And that's just simply a difficult thing, I think, for the games in this space. But I
Yeah.
think that we'll overcome it through more of those simplified experiences. Sort of a long-winded answer to get down to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And you seem to be jumping towards the marketing angle of board games. What made you go
Big board
that
game
route?
fan.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a huge market in board games, correct?
Yeah, I've said it a few times in the Wolf Game Discord, but like, the tabletop gaming market, I think, is a $15 billion market. And it's something that when I looked at Wolf Game, when, back in, I guess, November of 2021, when Land and Farmers were first revealed, that's where my mind went. I thought, these are tiles to a giant board game. And what we're going to be doing is some amount of resource management. Understanding, of course, that there'd always be a competition underlying that there'd be tournaments and events, but the visual marker of a board game, I think, is a really powerful thing. It's really intuitive as well. And so it doesn't take a huge leap to get there for a product like Wolf Game. InfiniGods I wouldn't ever compare to a board game. I wouldn't necessarily compare what Yuga's doing to board games either. Those are certainly different categories. But for me, that was one of the stronger hooks to the long game that Wolf Game is playing, is that it was this board game, but imagine you could swap out tiles. Imagine you could swap out game pieces. You could change the rules. You could introduce these whole new experiences on top of that, like an expansion pack, to that board game experience. And I thought, that's pretty cool. That's first of its kind. And I don't think we've seen anything like it, despite, how simple I think it seems on the surface.
Yeah, very well said. And you can relate to a board game in particular, Catan, right?
Yeah, and Wolf Game's always been up front. The Shepherd, included those influences in one of the early relics prior to the launch of the full game farm experience. We saw Catan, we saw Pokemon cards. I can't remember what else was in there. Squid Game, of course.
Was there Risk? Was Risk in there?
There might have been. There might have been a game like Risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, what the takeaway is looking at a GIF like that is, or GIF, whichever you prefer.
What is it? What is the technical term on that? There's so many people that get that wrong. GIF or GIF? I really don't know. I say GIF.
Wolf Game VC will tell you it's GIF. I like GIF. It reminds me of peanut butter. I don't know.
Yeah, but GIF is GIF, right?
You know what? So what?
Yeah. This is Web3, mother trucker.
Exactly. We do things our own way.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power going back to keeping it simple. So one of the hardest onboarding kind of friction points that you run into, right? The wallets, correct? And how chaotic everything seems. When I'm preaching Wolf Game to my in real life buddies here, they want to be able to play, and then I'm like, okay, well, you need a MetaMask wallet, and then it's just a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. So where do you see like the onboarding opportunities? And I believe that you had just posted or retweeted a company called Paper.
Yeah, Third Web acquired Paper, which is a company that they invested in. One of their Third Web has a million different services, from smart contract SDKs to custodial wallet solutions, and Paper helps them with that. I last was the head of Web3 at Miller Knoll, Herman Miller and Knoll Furniture, manufacturers of several famous chairs that you've probably seen on TV and in movies. The Eames Lounge chair that all the sharks use on Shark Tank. The Aeron chair is ubiquitous in the office place. I was leading their exploration of Web3 for the better part of a year. And that was one of the chief things, I guess, that we thought about was how do people take ownership of a digital product from us, because we were in the business of making real world furniture. So like what is the opportunity there? And I won't get into all of the detail, but in terms of onboarding people, what you really need to do is hide those blockchain elements, right? The simplest way for someone to purchase something that is digital is not to have to install a MetaMask extension, not to buy ETH, but to just use their credit card, maybe through your Shopify store. And Shopify has a lot of solutions for that today already. But it's really about making that user journey as simple, intuitive, and familiar as possible, while still championing, what is the real tremendous promise of the Web3 world, which is digital ownership. And that, it's gotten a lot easier. There are many, many solutions now for custodial wallets. I think you'll see a lot of games in the space taking advantage of that, where you're creating a wallet with an email address or a social media login. You don't see the wallet. It's how Nike's .swoosh platform's done it. That's how Pudgy Penguins does it with their physicals. You scan the QR code or enter the claim code in the box, and they create the wallet for you. And then from there, if you want to learn more, if you want to do something with the digital asset, you can claim it, right? Like you can send it from that wallet that they create to your MetaMask wallet or your Ledger or Trezor, whatever you choose. I think that the real growth in this space is going to happen through these wallet providers. The real winners, I think, long term in the blockchain space, specifically thinking about digital ownership, are those wallet companies. There's Magic Link, there's Third Web, there's a Coinbase solution now, Coinbase Wallet. That share of wallet is uber important. You know, you think about like even on your iPhone, Apple Wallet, it's only a matter of time before Apple Wallet supports digital currency, supports NFTs, any kind of digital token. I see that coming to your device, right? The NFT meta has shifted. Like digital ownership is paramount, but what do you do with that? How do you monetize that? You know, I've said several times in chat that like there really isn't a lot of revenue coming into this space, not just the space broadly, but gaming. And so you have to think about like, how do you create VIPs out of your owners? And then how do you on-ramp other people to these ecosystems that you're building? How do you generate revenue without extracting from your VIPs, from your owner base? You know, the simplest way is to do more mints, but that just dilutes your product. So you have to think about how you expand, which is through those custodial wallet solutions, stuff that makes blockchain invisible for, you know, the quote unquote normies out there in the world. And then how do you make things valuable? And that's bringing value back to the tokens that you already have out in the space, whether that's through brand access or early access in the way that InfiniGods does it, or the way that Wolf Game does it, where token ownership is not required to participate on the peak. Maybe you just have a custodial wallet that's got some wool and some peak credits. Maybe you buy them from other users, but owning the wolf or the sheep or the farmer or the land plot enriches your experience and enables you to participate in the peak without worrying about buying wool or credits from some other user or some sort of like bank, you know, if you will, with, you know, your hard-earned dollar.
Yeah. And you cast the net, right? So you get them into the net, and then you reward them too for, you know, taking that next step towards the digital ownership, whether it be opening up a MetaMask or, you know, that can be certainly be and make it worthwhile for your customers. And then, like you said, you know, in order to unlock even levels down the road, you're going to need to be able to purchase the NFT or, you know, open up a little bit more crypto native wallet, but they're going to want to at that point because they are drinking the juice, right?
Yeah, totally. It's really about enriching the overall experience. I'll give you some insight into what King of Destiny is doing because I'm really excited for this app. I think that when you look at the mobile gaming space and you think about how companies are approaching Web3 gaming, it's often under that moniker, we're a Web3 gaming company. But InfiniGods is really a mobile gaming company first that then layers in those Web3 elements, again, to enrich the experience. So with King of Destiny, you're downloading an iPhone game, right? An iPhone game in an existing category. It happens to be the fastest growing category on the market right now. But when you have the game, you don't need to own any NFTs. You don't need to own any cryptocurrency. You can play the game on your iPhone. You can buy in-app purchases if you want to, you know, advance within the game. But then there's this hint of something more. If you connect your InfiniGods account to your device, now you have access to the NFTs that might be associated with that account. If you've got our Elder Gods, you get boosts within the KOD experience. And so you can see how someone who might not own any NFTs or might not be familiar with NFTs at all might say like, well, what's this? I really enjoy this game. I'm already in. I've participated in the on-ramp. Maybe I bought some gems or gold, whatever currency we're going to use in the game to enhance my play. But like, there's something more here, and I can feel like I'm really part of it. And so they go out and they learn a little bit more. They visit OpenSea or they visit a first party marketplace and they buy right from you. That's another way to bring people in, and that's a way that I see a product like Wolf Game going.
Awesome. What gets you super excited about Web3?
It's truly that promise of ownership, I think, is so powerful. I mentioned to you before we started that I'm wearing my 90cc shirt right now, and I love the fact that I can scan it, I can issue POAPs to people that meet me. I think that's a novel concept, maybe not used to the fullest of its potential at the moment. But I love the fact that I can own something, and for me, this is physical stuff. I've got prints on the wall. I have a squiggle behind me. I can own something in my home and I can't share it with anyone. And I think Gary Vee's talked about this before too, but like once it's on chain, I can share it with everyone. It really is, for lack of a better word, it really is a way to flex what you've got and share your collections with people. I happen to be very passionate about print work. So these are James Jean prints behind me. James Jean, back in the spring of 21, I think, is when he first started selling NFTs. These are not linked to a digital asset, but I wouldn't put it past him from doing that in the future as, you know, a certificate of authenticity, proof of ownership. I think it's a really powerful thing. That's what we were exploring at Miller Knoll. You buy an Eames chair. How does anyone know you have an Eames lounge? Well, you can scan it. You can claim the digital twin of that asset, and you can bring it with you anywhere in a Web3 environment. That wallet carried over into games, into other web experiences, into new commerce experiences, I think is a really powerful thing. One of the things I know G wanted to do with 90cc, and he piloted this, I think they piloted it at Art Basel. You could get discounted entry or like premium entry into certain events that were happening around Miami if you were wearing your 90cc outfit, whether that's the hat or the shirt. And that's a really, really interesting use case that is only enabled by digital ownership and proof of ownership. So for me, I just love going down that rabbit hole. I think it opens up so many possibilities, from partnerships and collaborations to these new commerce experiences to new kinds of affiliate programs. You could verify that someone owns a wolf, cashed in their peak credits, and then see how many people they shared them with. And maybe reward them for sharing. Like a leaderboard I'd love to see in Wolf Game, and we've talked a lot about different leaderboards in Wolf Game, but imagine a leaderboard that shows how many gifts, how many people you've onboarded to the peak, right? Like that's a really powerful thing, to not just drive adoption, but drive the kind of organic growth that Wolf Game has thrived on to date. Imagine going to a hotel or a cafe and seeing furniture you like, or a print on the wall. Like I know Tyler Hobbs has like old school generative art on the walls in some hotels. You really like it, you scan it, and you get a Fidenza. You know what I mean? Like that is something that is enabled by the link between the real world and the digital world through an asset that you can actually take custody of. And I just love that stuff.
That's great, man. And thinking about your digital flex, and I actually got into a little bit of a discussion with a normie friend of mine over dinner, and she was like, well, I really don't understand the art scene in, the digital art scene. Like, what am I going to do? Just have a screen up on my wall? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, totally you are literally staring at a screen 90% of your day. The only people, say for my physical art, the only people that are actually able to see are the ones that come to your home, right?
Yep.
Or are watching a podcast like this. But if you do have that digital in your digital wallet, the whole world can see it. It really truly is amazing. It really is. And I love the fact of like understanding, even from a new age of entrepreneurs, I believe that this Web3 is going to bring about, right? It's the feeling of ownership is so powerful, and the opportunities that come with it are amazing. Looking from a team standpoint, right? You can also understand who your true fans are, right? Who your true community members are, because you can track so many of their habits that you can't do in the
You
Web2
can
space.
track their info. Yeah, I mean, ownership is on chain, and so you look at what Tiffany did with the NFTIF project. They knew who owned CryptoPunks. They knew how much ETH was in their wallets. They knew these were luxury buyers. They figured out like what an acceptable minimum would be from an inventory standpoint. You know, how many can we sell these people? At what price point can we sell to these people? And they successfully did like, I don't remember how much that was. It was millions of dollars though within
Yeah.
hours to punk
Yeah.
holders exclusively, which is just mind blowing. It's a totally new CRM, and it's a less invasive form of marketing, I think, but one that is very powerful because it's born out of ownership. I'm someone who I was a digital strategist for more than a decade, and so targeted ads are sort of my thing. I love being served targeted ads though. Like I want to see what I'm interested in. Like don't hit me with blanket ads on TV for like, you know, like Viagra. I'm young, I don't need it. You know what I mean? But like tell me something about a watch. Tell me something about this NFTIF pendant I might be able to afford. Like that's the stuff that interests me. So like please target me with the things that interest me. And the blockchain allows you to do that in a way that is unparalleled in terms of really understanding your personality. Because I think, you know, as someone else who owns digital goods, you understand that personal connection to your diesel in the same way that I've got a personal connection to my squiggle or to the wolves that I own. They mean something to me because they're visual. I can see them. They're not just a token, not just a loyalty membership card in my wallet, right? That I never look at. They're something that I actually engage with.
Yeah. And that's where I've spent a lot of my investments in Wolf Game, the diesels and the wolves. And a little, you know, I'm a little underexposed to wool. I think at the end of the day, I think we all are, right? Even the woolionaires, they're sitting there going, oh man, you know, what is it at? It's at 0.005 right now, right? Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
it's pain. It's pain if you're someone that bought high and
Mm.
continued to buy high and then
Yeah.
bought it all the way down.
Yeah.
It can be painful. But you
Sure.
know, I can't get into like this is not coming from a team perspective. This is just me personally buying wool. When you look at games, what always performs best, I shouldn't say always because this is really a new paradigm when you think about actually owning assets that are part of the game. But historically, what performs best is that token. People play Candy Crush or Clash of Clans, you know, all these mobile games, and they've got currencies of their own in game. You spend some real world dollars on them, and it goes to zero right away, right? You might get like 10,000 gems or crystals or whatever to use in the game, but it goes to zero right away. But people are buying them. People are buying them like crazy. Coin Master is a game that's in market right now that's relatively similar in a similar category to King of Destiny. Coin Master makes $2.5 million in revenue a day, and that's
Wow.
people spending on something that goes to zero immediately. Wool, on the other hand, if you're investing in Wool or a token for any other protocol or game, is not going to zero. It's whatever it is in the market, right? But it's not going to zero. You could always sell it for something to recoup some of your investment back. And when you think about a token like Wool that we do know to be aggressively deflationary, you can imagine that the value of that token will go up over time as it becomes more scarce. And that's a really powerful concept specific to Wool, but you know, not necessarily specific to the general idea of what makes cryptocurrency in a gaming environment really compelling.
Hmm. Do you feel like there's a big conflict of interest with you being part of the team and then having wool, right? Do you have like conversations with yourself,
Yeah.
internal battles?
I certainly hope no one watches my wallet, but you know, I haven't been a great trader, so more than anything, it's just embarrassing. Anyone that's associated with the team has an ethical trading agreement in place, so you won't see any buys or sells from me in the event that there could be news or a reveal of an NFT like land or farmers, for example. I don't view it as a conflict of interest because I am an external contractor. So even though we are comfortable calling myself the business development lead or partnerships lead or even a community manager, I'm not really on the team. I'm associated with the team. It's a really I don't know if it's like the most robust way to paint that picture. I think there's a lot of nuance there
Well,
because
it's just
sometimes I
so
do say
different.
things that are, yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because sometimes I do represent the team, but sometimes I don't represent the team. And it really just depends on the words that are coming out of my mouth and maybe sometimes how I'm feeling up here, which I think is definitely challenging. And it's tough when you come into chat and have a yellow name and people look at you like you're the customer service rep or you are the shepherd. And I'm neither really, but maybe a little more the first one, but also like I'm not a developer. I can only share so much back to the team and expect results. It's a tough balance for sure.
Yeah, you've a lot of props to you, man. Just being able, like, you handle conflict very well. You and
Uh,
term, I believe you.
sometimes.
No, I believe you do, and I would have your back 100% on that. Obviously, it's tempting to get a little emotional at times when your character is being called out, right? I mean, it's like, you're doing
Yeah.
what's in the best interest of the community too, and so I'm sure that is super challenging. Are you in direct communication with Shep? Like, can you speak to a little bit about who the Shep is? And I know a lot of the Wolf Game community members are always building these different storylines in their own heads, but can you give us some
Yeah.
insight into that?
I can do a little bit of demystification. I am under NDA, and as part of my contract, it's incumbent upon me to keep details of the team private. And so I can't say who I may or may not believe the Shep to be. I can't talk about the size of the team. I can say that the team's relatively small. I think that people have everyone has different expectations for what Wolf Game is, what Wolf Game could be, what Wolf Game should be. And at the end of the day, I think it's important to recognize that it is a small team. It's an indie developer. I think the team has been upfront about that, or the Shepherd rather has been upfront about that. In some of the ways that the game itself has been described. I believe there was a tweet, and I can't recall when this was, but there was some language around this being one of the most ambitious projects that they've ever tackled. And that's true, certainly. I think it's really important to remember that there are a lot of talented people working behind the scenes on Wolf Game. It very much is the Shepherd's vision. The Shepherd is driving this car, but there are other people there that are supporting it. And it's easy, I think, to forget that when there's so much money invested in, I say invested, I guess, because it's money that like we put in, but we're not really investors. And that's also a tricky thing. And it's easy to feel emotional about that, even myself personally. But it's important to remember, I think, that there are real people on the other side of the screen, not just the moderators, which would include myself, but also like the team. It's not just the Shepherd, and everyone who's working on it truly wants the best for Wolf Game. Things take time. Something that comes up often is this notion that like Wolf Game's not developing fast enough. And as I said, the team's small, and that's certainly a part of it. But another big part of it is simply that they are meticulous, and changes that are made to the game are made with great thought and often a lot of testing. When Cave Game released, it was a big surprise to us, but they'd spent a lot of time modeling Cave Game, modeling the outcomes. The Shepherd knew, and I know this from a conversation that he had with Wham Fever, so I don't think it falls strictly under the NDA, but when Wham Fever was developing his extension that allowed people to move through the caves and sort of automated a little bit of the process, they had this one-on-one that I thought was really insightful that dove into a lot of like the big brain specifics around dev that it's just like Greek to me. But they talked about the modeling aspect. They talked about the intentionality behind when and where we found gems or wool or merch in the cave. And they had an idea for how much of that stuff we'd find before the end of the game. And I thought that that was really interesting. And it applies today also to the full game in terms of how quickly the community would develop the land in terms of raising structures or running out of energy. So the introduction of jugs was really meant to combat a potential energy crisis. And that development was done well in advance. It's not like any of this stuff is delayed because dev's not done necessarily. It's delayed in part because it's just not something that we need in that moment. And even though the community might think we need certain things like a farmer's market from the jump, the team doesn't necessarily feel that we do, and they're guiding the game based on their own models for the success and growth of the economy. And that's a really tricky thing, I think, to remove yourself from as a player, because you're seeing, there's an interesting analog here. You're seeing that with like Diablo 4 right now. I am not a Diablo 4 player at all, but for whatever reason, I keep seeing the commentary when I'm browsing like Reddit or reading game news. There are some players that maximize their gameplay, right? They're like, I'm going to get to the end game right away, and then what? And they just complain and complain because there's not end game content ready for them. But then there's these other players that take a long time to get there towards the end. And you've got that in Wolf Game. We're a really small community, but you've got that in Wolf Game. Particularly people like Corey, who owns a ton of assets. He's bred like dozens of wolves. Me, as a much smaller player, I can't even imagine that. So for someone like him and someone like me, the economies are totally different. And that's a really tricky balance to figure out. And I think that, through Cave Game, the team learned a lot with respect to how like whale players might engage with the game, but they also made something that was intended to be used by everyone. And I think that we're seeing some of that dichotomy play out in the server today as we talk about like what's going on with the peak, where are people's expectations. Some people want to play the summit nonstop. They want to gamble 50K wool, a pop on a game. Some people can't even afford that, right? Like some people can't even imagine that. I'm not a player that would be doing that, and I've got like 4 million wool to my name, but this is not how I like to play the game. And so there's always going to be these competing sentiments and
personalities, yeah.
And I guess I just want to stress, like in this conversation about like demystifying the team, like the shepherd reads it all, the shepherd sees it all. Everyone is heard, and it is the job of myself and Term and Hoffman as well to help elevate that to the Shep's attention. Bry is someone else that has a pretty close relationship with the shepherd and has provided advice in that regard. They see it all and they think about it all, and they truly do care about it all. But again, to my earlier point, they're meticulous. They're so meticulous. So right now, the peak, we've been in beta for a little while. They're quashing bugs. They set up a new support bot to help quash bugs. Like the whole goal is to fix this thing and make sure that when you do want to bet that 50K wool, it's stable. It's not going to crash on you, right? And it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see that. I think we'd all agree that like more transparent communication would be welcome. It's never been the Wolf Game brand, and that's also, I think, a tricky thing to understand and wrap your head around. And it's something that I can say that the shepherd himself has grappled with a lot. Like, do I say this now? What do I say now? Like sometimes you risk getting ahead of yourself or getting ahead of the community. It's just a very tricky balance, and you've got a small team that's heads down trying to improve this thing, while also trying to communicate what's coming next. There's a lot to come.
Looking into the future with Wolf Game, what is some alpha that you might be able to drop? Is there anything like juicy that you can let us know or give our audience something to kind of hold on to?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been in the channel lately, there's a lot of rumors and misinformation being shared. There's a lot on the horizon outside of all of that. I don't want to get too much into the merger and acquisition rumors that Beanie is fueling, but the development on Wolf Game is not stopping. Even in the event that something like that were to happen, Wolf Game is not going away. Wool is not going away. I think those assurances are really important and something that I feel very comfortable sticking to. My role with Wolf Game, is not changing to my knowledge. And so I wouldn't let any rumors strike fear into the hearts of Wolf Gamers. On the horizon, we've got tournaments and events on the peak. We, of course, have the Slope and the Summit opening up much more regularly. There are updates coming to the farm itself. There's at least a notion of some potential holiday themed events, around like Halloween or Christmas. And I can't confirm anything that may or may not be coming, but this idea of seasonality is something that is shared by myself and the Shepherd as someone who's really big on the bridge from physical to digital and back. Love to see physical recreations of wolf wits and water wall. Never really cracked the code on tug of wool, but something like that would be really rad to see.
In real life Squid Game going on.
Yeah, what Pudgy Penguins has done, not just for the space broadly, in terms of being this culturally relevant and recognizable IP that's out in the world, they've captured the toy market. And we've talked about Wolf Game being a first of its kind blockchain board game. Why not go after that tabletop gaming market of $15 billion? These games don't necessarily have the best margins, but at scale, it could totally be a new revenue opportunity for Wolf Game, and not just a revenue opportunity, which is important for the team, less important, of course, for the holders, but a new way to onboard users, a new on-ramp. You could imagine selling Wolfwits on Amazon or in Target stores, a customer buying that who's not initiated in Wolf Game at all, and seeing that there's a whole online community where they can play this game against, that is a really compelling reason to buy something in the store if it unlocks that utility for you. And it's a way to bring new people in to our world, and a new way to get them involved in the peak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I see all of those things on the horizon. Not gonna say when or where, but that's the stuff that is in this unpublished roadmap of ours.
Yeah, that's exciting. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Gary V, right? So Gary V is a decent sized bag holder, right? I mean, he is a marketing guru. Has there been any talks with him at all, or has he had his hand in anything or possibly in the future?
Yeah, I got to be careful in the way that I paint this picture, because there isn't any inside information being shared between anyone. Again, like, I'm on an NDA. Anyone associated with the team has an ethical trading agreement in place, so everything is on the up and up. But there have been conversations between myself and others with outsiders from Wolf Game, talking about how we continue to develop the product, how we continue to grow the ecosystem. I don't know how involved Gary himself has been. I know that inviting us to VCon was Gary's idea. Wolf Game is a brand that is well known and well respected in the Web3 world. I think it's really important just to highlight how small the Web3 world is. I've said it a couple of times in chat that the Web3 gaming market is really small. There's not a lot of players that are really playing. There's a lot of people that own assets, hundreds of thousands of people that own gaming assets, but they're not really playing the games. What we need is outside growth. And so there have been a lot of conversations with others about how we bring people in, how you form that on-ramp. And the overall message, I think, is that we're all stronger together. I've had some conversations with Figgy from Yuga. Figgy, as some may know, co-founded 10KTF with Beeple. Now he's a chief creative officer, I believe, at Yuga. His focus has been on the other side. Through partners like that, Wolf Game has been able to secure a slot in the other side second trip. They've got their Legend of Mara game coming out. And Wolf Game wasn't included in the Legend of Mara teasers, but I believe Forgotten Runes was. Of course, all the Yuga properties. Maybe the Cool Cats were included in that. They're certainly included in other side. And I was talking with Figgy a little bit about that. And what he shared with me is that Yuga's in the business of creating products for all of us. And I think that's a really important takeaway. Wolf Game right now and many of these different ecosystems feel very insular. And Yuga, Pixel Vault's reboot protocol, those platforms, those brands and companies are aiming to break down some of those walls and bring people together in a way that benefits everyone who is still around, frankly, and operating in this space. And so there's a lot more room for that. And certainly I've been a part of those types of conversations in my capacity as a biz dev and partnership contractor with Wolf Game.
Super interesting. Yeah, Yuga has been the trailblazer in the space for sure. So many people are, apes are going down. Apes, I believe, again, are the trailblazer. So the space is not dependent on how well they do, but the rising tide, raises all boats. I mean, we should be rooting for everyone in the space. And
it's certainly, I think Yuga certainly signals the success or possibility of success for others. And so to that end, I understand the perspective.
Sure. When did your conviction really strengthen when it came to Wolf Game and also InfiniGods? I do want to touch a little bit on InfiniGods because it's a big part of your life and it's such a great project. I know Damon and Owen, super nice guys. So if you can touch a little bit on like that conviction in both of those.
It's those guys. It's these founders. I know that I'm in a really privileged position to speak with the shepherd so frequently, but if you've had time to speak with Damon or you've had time to speak with Owen, they're super bright people. They're very bright, intellectually curious minds, and they know a lot about how to deliver product in a way that is sustainable. I think that's true of the Shepherd. I think that's true of Damon and Owen at InfiniGods. I said before that InfiniGods is a mobile gaming company. So right there, my conviction went through the roof. We're not trying to do the mint out a bunch of NFTs first thing in the way that Wolf Game did. Wolf Game, I think, began as a product of its time, and in many ways is a luxury crypto native. I'm hesitant to say casino, but you're wagering against other players, so it's a crypto native competition, and I think that's really compelling. And I've had conversations with Snowfro about that and what makes the blockchain gaming element compelling to Wolf Game. But really, what seals my conviction is talking with the shepherd in the same way that talking with Damon and talking with Owen and understanding the vision for InfiniGods has sealed my conviction there. I made these two companies really my career at this moment. I left Miller Knoll when they sunset the Web3 work that I was doing, and it's not like a happy memory for me. It's pretty recent, but they weren't ready for this, and these brands are ready for this moment, and I think that we are at an inflection point, despite being in the bear market, that these companies that are continuing to build in a very thoughtful, a smart and meticulous way are going to come out of that on the other side very successful. I mentioned InfiniGods being a mobile game. Like, truly, it seems simple, but it's a stroke of genius because we are still participating in the Web3 world. It's just that we're doing it on another level. It's not where we hope our bread and butter will be because the money just isn't there. Again, there aren't really those Web3 gamers that everyone talks about. That audience is remarkably small. And to that end, like, VC funding is not really prominent in the way that it was in 21 and 22. In fact, I think I saw a stat. So what, we're 6 months into the years, there's been like $500 million in VC investment in Web3 gaming, where in 2022 or 21, one of those years, there was over $2 billion, right? It's astronomically different, that landscape. And when you see a company like InfiniGods developing compelling mobile games in categories that are quickly growing, and then layering in this Web3 ownership element, it's sort of like these t-shirts or these art prints all over again for me. It's this real connection to people's everyday lives made more valuable by the ownership lever that they're pulling on the back end that's almost entirely invisible to the customer. And I think that is really, really compelling, and where all of this is going long term. Wolf Game, on the other hand, is still that crypto native audience, but understanding that and what makes that compelling has kept me going. I think it's a really tough environment, and I'm someone that's been impacted by the prices going ever lower on Wolf Game assets and on
Mm.
Wool. But the vision for something greater, we've seen it, we've all seen it, it's there now, and it's just a matter of how do we effectively scale this and grow this. And where InfiniGods is doing the on ramp through an existing medium that people understand intuitively already, Wolfgang did it backward, right? We've got the product, we've got the ownership piece there. Now we need to go back in time and build the on ramp.
Yeah, yeah. Super interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about your crypto story, like how you got into the space? What got you, what really kind of grabbed you?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I mentioned that I'm a terrible trader, and that is true. The space, my entrance into this space was motivated by money and the flips that I could achieve, and that swiftly didn't go very far for me.
Mm.
But really, where I came from was the print world. So I collect posters. I collect alternative movie posters. It's a sort of a niche collecting scene, but I was buying prints. These artists that I was buying prints from started making NFTs. I was very skeptical. This is in early 2021. I was very skeptical. I thought, surely these are cash grabs. Why would you want to own a picture of a monkey? Not understanding that proposal of this thing existing as a VIP ticket to a very special club with innumerable benefits. I didn't get that part. I just thought it was a scam. So I put it off and put it off. Finally, I saw a collection. It's actually called The Visitors by an artist named Mike Mitchell that I thought was really interesting. It was on Polygon, so I didn't have to worry about gas fees once I was appropriately on the network. And I started buying The Visitors. And then I understood that this got me a certain level of access with the artist. It brought me into a community. I got to watch that grow. And I did make some money trading those. And I thought, this is really interesting. Let's see what else is out there. And then I discovered a gamified mint like Wolf Game. And that really captivated my attention. I was familiar with Bored Apes. I was familiar with World of Women. There was a lot of stuff happening in the PFP space back then. And despite the Visitors being a PFP collection, it was by an artist that I knew and respected and had collected pieces from in the past. And so I understood the collecting piece of that, I think, on a different level than I could with something I was less familiar with. And so it was a really good, soft introduction to what that might mean. And then, I just very rapidly fell down the rabbit hole, rather, exploring what possibilities there were for NFTs in particular. I was buying crypto back in 2008, had all kinds of coins, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, some others. And I fell in and out as cycles came and went. Bought some here, sold some here, bought some here, sold some there. But there never really was a use case that I found compelling until I discovered NFTs and what those offered. For me, the long-term benefit of NFTs is in this VIP arena and crafting something special and valuable for a customer that's ownership based. And you don't really need crypto for that. I think we're past that. You need the blockchain because you need this distributed network that really anyone can access and layer utility onto. You need to have that public database that's not owned by a wall. It's not existing within a walled garden. But you don't necessarily need the crypto piece for it to work, right? Like you need the Ethereum blockchain to hold your NFTs because the smart contract lives there.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't necessarily need to buy it with ETH. There should be an on-ramp to buy it with fiat. And that's not to say that I'm like bearish on crypto or anything. I still think that ETH in particular for me is like the app store of the future because of the smart contracts that are already existing on the network and because of the potential. But I just think it should be a lot easier for core consumers. And I'll always be that like crypto native customer where I'm going to hold ETH and I'm going to buy things with ETH. You should have that option. You should be able to avoid centralized banking systems. I'm very big on the notion of decentralized ownership of your money. I just don't think it's essential to NFTs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So you started as a just a regular community member in Wolf Game, at what point were you like, okay, I'm going to spend a little bit more time and I want to start becoming a community manager? And then like giving like
It happened within hours.
yeah, how did that all transcend?
Well, yeah. So I mentioned that I landed in the Wolf Game server coming out of a trading Discord. I've been involved in options trading for the better part of 4 or 5 years now, just as a hobby. It's something I do with my fun money. But when I saw the flip potential, money making potential in the NFT space, I started dabbling. And getting into the Wolf Game server and seeing utter chaos was driving me crazy. Very few of us had any understanding, myself included, had very little understanding of like what we were doing, what the long-term goal was, what the EV plus way was to play this thing. And so I started clamoring for mod support. You could probably go back and see my old messages in the server. And I got a DM from the shepherd asking me if I'd like to do it. And at that time, it was myself, a guy named Schemo the Great. We brought on Gimpy a little bit later, and there was another mod named Trippy. And really what we were there for was just to keep things as orderly as possible, which is really hard. We didn't have a very strict mandate. It was just like, no FUD, try and help keep people going and keep the excitement running hot. And it gradually, that role matured, and I certainly matured in that role. I mentioned to you separately that I did customer service at the Apple Store for like a decade. And so I had that mindset of being like the face of a company that people might have complaints with, and sort of like how to help service that. It's a lot different in text form, and given how busy the Wolf Game server was in the early months, I think a lot gets lost in the quick translation to text as you're trying to help people. And so I do feel bad about being short with people, but it also was just a crazy time. And I think anyone who's been with Wolf Game from the early days will recognize that not only have I probably matured in my role, but the server too has matured in its ability to help service whatever needs someone has, whether they want to vent their frustration, whether they have feedback or have a specific issue. Definitely come a long way.
Then you went into biz development. Like, how did that happen?
That was a real play to my strengths more than anything. We were really lucky when we launched Wolf Game in that it was at the top of the bull market frenzy. So a lot of people came to us without us having to go to them. And because I was positioned as a moderator, I received a lot of that communication directly. And so I very quickly began to build relationships with 10KTF, now Yuga, with people like Marshmallow and Banks and some of those early like big buyers and celebrity buyers that came in. And many of those people have gone away today, but that element of relationship building is still very prescient. And it's something that I've been doing in my background as a digital strategist. I worked for large brands, Merrell Footwear, Harley Davidson Footwear, Herman Miller and Herman Miller Gaming. I worked on the Logitech G partnership with Herman Miller when we launched our embodied gaming chair. So I had this acumen for working with partners, even though biz dev had never been an explicit part of my job. Just being from that professional world, I think went a long way.
Yeah.
When you're in a server as wily as Wolf Game and working with a brand that was moving as quickly as Wolf Game was at the time. And so it was a natural fit for me there.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that opportunity. It's been really awesome.
Yes, and there's something to be said about hiring from within the ecosystem, right? And not having to bring in management from the outside, or like in your position, biz dev, and you proving yourself. So, dude, you should be proud of yourself, man. I think that's really cool, and your conviction to jump into Web3 and make it a profession. Do you often think or challenge your sanity?
Every single day. Yeah. This is some other juicy alpha for you, but this notion of like hiring from within, that is the ethos of Wolf Game. That is central to the product that we have today. There have been many people that have been part of the Wolf Game community that have contributed in many ways. beyond third-party tools. Wink, wink. Even my role with InfiniGods is truly born out of the relationships that I forged through Wolf Game. Bry and Panther, both a big part of Wolf Game, both leaders at InfiniGods, and they were gracious enough to offer me the opportunity to work with them. And those are doors that would not have been opened if not for Wolf Game. And so it's a real privilege to have been part of it for the last 19, 20 months. It's in many ways completely reshaped my personal and professional life, and really only for the better. Despite the pain in the market and the low asset prices, I'm so grateful for the people that I've met, and certainly the trajectory that it's sent my career on.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak to a little bit about your wife? Maybe her thoughts of everything. Is she on board? Like, where does she stand with Web3?
She gets it. She's certainly happy that I've got something to be passionate about. That is also my work. I think that anyone who's able to work in a field that they love and can talk about all day is really special. I think she probably wishes I didn't talk about it all day, but that's sort of the name of the game. What's really, really difficult, particularly on the community management front, is managing your own time and being able to step away from a device, either a desktop or a mobile device. And it's especially tricky when our phones are on us at all times. And as a parent to young kids too, like, the last thing you want is to be distracted from your children. And I've definitely been guilty of that in the last year and a half. It's not a good feeling. And it's definitely something to constantly think about, to be sure that it's not impacting your life and your personal relationships in a negative way. And, I believe I've said this in the Discord server as well, like, take a break, like I encourage anyone in the server to take a break from the server, because it'll drive you mad. Whether you're playing a game and it doesn't go your way, or you're just shooting the shit, even, like, nothing wrong with taking a break. People talk about touching grass. Do it. You touch grass every day. You touch grass, drink water. Like, those are things you need in your life. Like, go hit the gym, whatever. Spend time with your family. Please.
Yeah. It's so true.
Because I don't play all the peak games. Like, you just can't. You have to try and find the most balance that you can.
Yeah. And you deal with a lot of the backlash, the most being in the community and for so long, and having to deal with a lot of tempers and emotions when people are over invested, right? So so that is definitely words to live by, is go touch some grass for sure, and live with balance. Do your kids play Wolf Game or InfiniGods?
They do, yeah.
Nice.
Actually, I had to cut my son off of King of Destiny because it's a little too gripping. He was really enjoying our test flight play tests that we have, and I was like, this is maybe not good for you at this point in your life, my little 6-year-old gambling addict.
Yeah.
He does love Wolf Game. The kids ask if they can check on my sheep and wolves every once in a while. Matt, Mr. Intuition, printed me a wood block with one of the posters for the peak on it. It says "Burn More Wool," and my son has it in his bedroom on top of his dresser.
It's awesome. The power of Wolf Game, man. Yeah. It's crazy. What kind of advice would you give to somebody that's looking to get into the Web3 arena?
Yeah, I would say don't. unless you're already in it. It's just, especially in this environment, it's just really hard. There are a lot of people hiring because there is still VC money in the space. My recommendation would be look at the technology providers. If you're not a developer who can make your own stuff, like me, I can't do any of that. Like, look at the technology providers and see what they're doing and how they're growing, because that is the future of this space. IYK powers the 90cc shirts, so they've got like NFC powered chips and shirts, other stuff that's coming, and like working with someone like that to help them grow their brand. I don't think they're hiring. I'm just plugging IYK, and I think that this is an interesting model. Working with someone like that, working with Magic Link. I think they've got a biz dev position open. Magic Link is a custodial wallet provider. Working with a company like ThirdWeb that is actively acquiring companies to create this full service platform. Like those are the companies you want to be involved in now, because they're going to be the ones that come out of the bear market very well positioned. Shopify, even, anyone that's dealing in commerce, that is where this is going. New commerce experiences. There's a reason that big brands are still entering the space, and that reason is new revenue streams. There is opportunity there. Magic Link just did the custodial wallet service for Mattel. So if you buy Hot Wheels or Barbie collectibles, you're buying them through Magic Link integrated with Shopify. Shopify has a whole blockchain team. Alex from Shopify, super brilliant mind. If you're a Web3 Breakdowns podcast listener, he's got a great episode. You could look at what Shopify is doing to see if there's an opportunity there. There are opportunities to suit all interests, but certainly in the biz dev or development department, that's where you're going to find the most opportunity. So if you're interested, that's where to look. Certainly at technology, less at companies like Yuga or Wolf Game or Pixelball. Or these companies have money, they are hiring, but I think if you're looking for something that's stable and secure and where you're going to find the most opportunity, it's going to be at a tech startup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's some great advice. And going back to what you were talking about with forming relationships within the space, especially during this bear market, I believe that there are a lot of high-level thinkers out there, builders that are more apt to communicate really with anyone, because I think that they're still trying to constantly think of how they're going to bring in revenue at this moment. I think it's an interesting point for podcasting and reaching out to builders specifically and trying to get them on the show. The route to them is going to be a lot easier than during a bull where everything else is crazy and nobody has time to do anything. Right? Yeah.
Never be afraid to DM. A lot of the folks that I know and have met, I've simply reached out. To your point about it being a quiet period in the market, people are much more receptive, I think, to that outreach just because there's a lot less of it. And I found that DMs go a long way. And it can be as simple as a cold call on Twitter. I've found a lot of success personally just reaching out that way to people.
Interesting. All great advice, man. Can you provide a deep dive into the differences and similarities between the platforms and protocols with Wolf Game and InfiniGods?
Yeah, I've said a few times that InfiniGods is really a mobile game studio first and then a blockchain company second. So what I think InfiniGods does really well, and you're seeing this from companies like Artifact and Nike, you'll see this from like Epic and in games like Fortnite and Roblox. Those last two are walled garden ecosystems where you're buying collectibles, they're associated with your account and they don't leave that ecosystem. Where like in InfiniGods or an Artifact, you've got an account and then your digital collectibles that you own are kept within that account, but because they're on chain, they can go with you wherever you go. That account-based approach, I think, is one that we will see far and wide in the future. And that is what sets InfiniGods apart from Wolf Game most specifically. Both still have ownership of digital assets. Those digital assets are essentially VIP passes. In the world of InfiniGods, you've got your gods, and Wolf Game, you've got wolves and sheep. Those are playable assets in the games. But InfiniGods offers free-to-play games, so anyone can jump into Merge, anyone can jump into Immortal Siege. King of Destiny will be free on iPhone. What we do is centered on bringing people in and then layering in Web3 later, and it's all account-based. Similar to a Roblox, similar to a Fortnite. Anyone can jump into those games if they choose to buy things to enrich or enhance their experience. It's all kept there. What makes InfiniGods a little bit more interesting with respect to the blockchain pieces are shipwright. If you're familiar at all with the shipwright, which you may not be, but some folks who listen may be, the shipwright is a place to take off-chain items and bring them on-chain. So through InfiniMerge or through Immortal Siege, you might collect these off-chain resources, very similar to how you might collect water or stone or wood in Wolf Game. And then you can mint them into arcs, which can be sold to other players through OpenSea. maybe in the future, a marketplace on our own site. But what's really cool about the shipwright is that it could be licensed to other companies that might want to take advantage of that technology. There could be a world in which to transfer water from one player to another, rather than wallet to wallet transfer in game, maybe you take your water that you have off chain in Wolf Game and you mint it through the shipwright into a water bucket and then sell that bucket of water to another player through a marketplace. That's not like the best or most obvious example. It's just an easy one, I think, to understand. That's the flexibility of the shipwright platform. And so that makes InfiniGods quite different from a lot of other gaming platforms that are out there today. You might have off-chain resources in any one of our games, King of Destiny, Immortal Siege, Infinimerge, and be able to mint them into on-chain things. We also debuted a really interesting new feature called Power Packs, which are sort of a classic collectible card pack opening experience. The initial launch of those supported our Immortal Siege playtest, but in the future, we will be able to reward really anything through these power packs. So it's a fun way to tap into the gamified, exciting mentality of ripping open a collectible card pack, whether those are baseball cards or something related to like a collectible card game, trading card game like Pokemon, for example.
I just got my 5-year-old his first pack of Pokemon cards. So... Yeah. He's excited.
And it's such a fun experience to like rip them open and see what you got. And that's something that we're exploring with InfiniGods. And I think that will be a really interesting mechanic to see grow and flourish. So that's InfiniGods. With Wolf Game, we've talked about it being blockchain first. It's for a crypto savvy player. It's much more complicated to get involved with. We're seeing gradually the on-ramp is being simplified. Right now. We've got gifts that we can give people to allow them to play the peak, but it still requires that they connect their wallet to the game first. What we will see is a custodial wallet solution for Wolf Game. We'll see simplified signing so that if you're playing on mobile, you don't have to deal with the stability risk of the MetaMask browser. You'll be in Safari or Chrome, you'll tap a button, it'll take you to MetaMask to sign, but then you can go back to Safari or Chrome to play. We'll see some of that. But Wolf Game is interesting because even though it all takes place in the blockchain, it's more reminiscent, I think, of those walled garden ecosystems where wool really is specific to Wolf Game. Wolves and sheep are really specific to Wolf Game. There is an open door to collaborations and partnerships inherently because it's on the blockchain, but that's not something we've done to date or we've seen to date, which I think makes that platform a little bit different. And then when you look at like what Yuga's doing, I mentioned they're building for everyone, what Reboot is doing in terms of offering a protocol that anyone can build games on. That's like a whole other way to look at it. Even in the other side, you can build apps in the Unreal Engine that run within the other side. I haven't seen what that looks like, but they have their own SDK.
So the interoperability
there will be a pathway for that through other side.
Really interesting. So what's InfiniGods' association with Polygon and then also Magic Eden?
Yeah, Magic Eden is a marketplace. They facilitated our mint on the Polygon network. I don't think anyone's really aligned on the end-all be-all chain for Web3 gaming. Certainly these layer 2s are attractive because there's no transaction fees.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot of items at scale. If you're talking about like gameplay items, you can do these things at scale without worrying about fees to either the player or to you as the originator. But I wouldn't say that's where we're always going to be. That just happens to be where we launched these alpha passes that we were using to allow people to play Immortal Siege during this playtest. And Magic Eden was a great partner for that launch. But we've seen others, comes to mind, the Grapes launched through OpenSea. We've seen others use these other partners to great success. And there's really nothing stopping us from exploring that either. You know, more or less working with Magic Eden provides some marketing resources and a way to get your product out there to an audience that's relevant to you.
Yeah. Wolf Game and InfiniGods have been kind of working together predominantly in the prize arena, right? So I saw recently, so there was an A8, an A7, two A6s, an A5, and 18 sheep all on the menu for prize pools.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you look at where this InfiniGods team came from. A lot of us are Wolf gamers, and we're Wolf gamers before InfiniGods
Mhm.
existed. So we've got this treasury full of Wolf Game assets, and we've been leveraging them as prizes. I think besides the fact that there's a synergy between the player bases, and part of that just being because a lot of the InfiniGods team came from Wolf Game. It's a great project to provide access to, I think, for players that might not necessarily be playing our games, and we want to introduce them to our games.
Mhm.
And our games are free to play anyway, so those prizes are available to anyone that wants to participate. We don't ask that you pay a mint price or buy something on secondary to participate, which I think is a nice way to softly engage people.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. If you could travel back in time to the day before the launch of Wolf Game and InfiniGods, what advice would you give your past self?
Man, I don't know. You want to say like, don't buy that A7 for 27 ETH. That'd be a
Is that
that'd
what
be a
you paid?
great piece of
Is
advice.
that what you paid?
I I can't remember if it was 21 or 27. I way overpaid for an A7. I've historically bought the top on Wolf Game assets, except for sheep.
But did you sell the top in order to make just a lateral
Yeah.
move?
Yeah, but that doesn't make it sting any less. It is what it is. I don't think I would give myself any advice in that regard because I don't regret the buys that I made, but that also is in part because of my ethos as a trader. I mentioned coming into the space for money, but I achieved what I wanted to achieve in that regard, and I've been buying Wolf Game assets because I like the assets and like the game. Anyone would have liked to save money on any of the purchases they've made in this space. But, as the saying goes, you can't time the market, or
Time in the
market is
market
better
is
than,
more valuable than timing the market, or something along those
there you
lines.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 that's it. And I'm personally comfortable with my investment, I use that loosely, in Wolf Game going to zero. Many others are not. Would I prefer that it not go to zero? Yeah. Like, I definitely hope that I can extract some value from that.
Mhm.
But I'm also here today because I really enjoy the product and I believe in the team that's behind the product. And for me, that's enough. And it might not be enough for everyone. And it doesn't have to be. like
Yeah.
if you're not into it, you're not into it. And that's fine. Like, I'm not going to self shame anyone. It is what it is. It's such an unusual space that I don't think any of us fully understand yet because of the involvement of real world money and because prices were absolutely bonkers through that bull market when many of us came into this space.
Yeah.
We haven't yet seen mass adoption. I don't know that we ever will. It's kind of a buzzy term. Like, in my view, we need more companies like InfiniGods that are making games first and foremost.
That are
They're a
fun.
games company that are fun, that people engage with, and then layer in those Web3 elements to enrich the experience. That's what's going to lead to more people in this space. But looking at it as a category unto itself, Web3 gaming, I just don't see it that way anymore. You just need gaming with Web3.
Yeah.
And some people might say that that's semantics, but I think there's a very clear distinction there.
Hmm.
You can't just make a game that's a Web3 game. You have to make a game that's good, fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
playable.
Yeah.
Um,
And we went in ass backwards,
right.
right?
That's it.
That
That's totally it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are others that are gaming companies in the Web3 space that talk about how important it is to be 100% on chain. I mean, I don't think that, I mean, it might in the future, right? But like, especially being on ETH or, the transaction
Mhm.
fees, the clunkiness of things, relating to the speed of the game, is it that important?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it is. I think in some respects, yes, but I don't think that's what people that play games care about. You look at like the success of Fortnite or of World of Warcraft is maybe a better example because World of Warcraft has like drops and items, and a lot of trust is placed on the developer. And I think that when you hear people clamoring for an on-chain game, it's an issue of trust, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
they want to see all of that happen on-chain because there's so much money involved.
Yeah.
And
Which
while
makes
I think
sense.
that
Yeah.
yeah, like I get it. Like I totally understand where people are coming from. And Wolf Game has had those kinds of complaints in the past, but the reality is that you have to trust the team and the way in which they've made their game. And it's tough because there are rampant security concerns in the Web3 space, and signing away everything you own is like all too easy, and you never know when it's going to happen to you. You just have to be careful. That's like a huge hurdle to bringing people into the space. And so when you think about the scams and bad actors, and you think about the level of trust that we have, I get why people, or rather the level of trust that we have to place on these people, I get why people are concerned and want to see everything on chain.
Yeah.
I think it's novel, truly, more than anything else. And I would love to hear another perspective on that. I know Kix, who's a friend of Wolf Game, is really big on chain game development. I know that artwork being generated on chain is really important to our friends at Art Blocks, and I understand that piece of it too, because that's a real longevity play. But when I think about, I don't know, I think about games differently. I'd be curious to hear the other side of that argument. I don't personally think it's that important.
Mm-hmm. And how big of a net can you cast if that is
Right.
your number one of importance, right? It's such a small crowd.
Yeah.
Super interesting, dude. I've gained so much information. I know our audience has too. What I love about Wolf Game is the community, right? And the in real life experiences. I think there's a lot of power to that. That is one of the main reasons why I have my A7. and it sounds ridiculous, right? But to get into Wolf Feast, you needed an A7. Were some lucky bastards that end up as A6s getting in.
I was A6 at the time.
And did you get in? I mean,
I had to be that organized.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I have a one of one A6 hat though. My hat was printed on a black base. All the other A6s were on blue.
Interesting.
Little perk.
I like that. Very cool. So that was very powerful, and seeing videos of the auction, and that every time I talk to an OG or somebody who has, a lot of money invested in the ecosystem, that's the number one that they jump to. And Web3 and all the digital work is awesome, but there's something to be said about the in real life perks. Do you see any of that coming in the future, the near future? I think you had mentioned possibly in the fall. And it's an investment, right? Because you are, from a founding standpoint, team standpoint, you are investing in your community. I know that stuff isn't cheap, open bar, dinners. But I think people will fly across the world to come to this. So where do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I've said repeatedly that Feast will come back. We were trying to lock down a Wolf Feast event for VCon, but as you know, because you were there, we ended up doing the joint game night IRL event, which is really an analog for Wolf Fest. I think it's really hard to recapture the magic of the first Feast and first Fest during NFT NYC, when that event was one to be at. You see brands like Bored Ape Yacht Club doing Ape Fest in Hong Kong this year, and even Artifact has had a couple of events in Japan. I'd be really curious to know how many people attend. I think with Bored Ape Yacht Club, you've got enough of a captive audience to bring people around the world to an event like that. I don't know if Wolf Game has that pull, but we've never tried it. One thing that we were looking for and benefited from, again, was an event where already a bunch of crypto and NFT people were going to be present,
Yeah.
so you can capitalize on them being there for it to guarantee your attendance. To your point, I do think that Feast is one of those things that people would show up for, regardless of the timing. And something we've discussed internally with respect to Feast is how do you bring back that magic to some extent? I don't think you can ever recapture it, but how do you continue to make it feel special? And one of the reasons it was not held during VCon is it just did not have the same vibe. The city, the spaces available to us, there's some great steakhouses, nationally renowned steakhouses, or world-renowned steakhouses rather, in Indianapolis. St. Elmo is one that immediately comes to mind when you say the name of the city. Keen's was such a special place and event that it became more and more difficult to imagine holding it anywhere else. And so something we've talked about is how do you, and I'm way peeling back the curtain here, but like how do you make Feast feel sort of like a secret society kind of thing, where it's always at the same place, it's extremely exclusive. Being there is, again, a reason to hold that wolf, right? Like it's not just a free steak dinner. It was a whole experience, well beyond the meal.
Yeah.
And how do you bring that back and make it meaningful each time, or with some degree of consistency?
Yeah. Well,
that's just been on our minds with respect to doing it again.
Well, if you're looking for somebody to add some flair, some opinions, and somebody who's created a bunch of events, I mean, that's what I love. So it's the building the mystique about things and getting a crowd. I mean, I've always been that personality type to get people and draw them into an event or whatever it may be. But that was me predominantly in college. I mean, that's what I did. I was known as the guy that just kind of knew everyone, but planned events, planned big parties, and kind of set the tone. So would love to help out if you could kind of, maybe relay the message to the chef. I'd love to help out. So, and I know that there's other people in the community that would too. So I think, really starting off and getting some data and some, I mean, corny wise is surveys, but like, kind of getting a good head around how, because you can't fake a feeling, right? And people don't know why they're doing something, but they will always, there's that quote of, they'll never really fully remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Right. So I think having that as the overarch is super important. And if there's anybody that could do it, it's a chef. Right. And the mystique and the lore behind it. So going true to like what really separates Wolf Game from other projects, and then why are people so convicted? And I love the fact of Shep just being anon, and he's got people eating out of the palm of his hands and has that ability. So super, it's just awesome, man.
The foundation of Wolf Game is built on these elements of surprise and frankly delight. I think that we saw it with Alpha Game, which none of us expected, and certainly that went on for a while. But Cave Game was wholly surprising in the middle of that, and just like those experiences, that's what we'll see from the peak. I don't think that we have any concept for what is happening next on the peak. We've got resource power-ups, we've got tournaments and events, and I'm confident that those elements will surprise people.
Very cool. Do you see Cave Game coming back at some point, or Cave Game on steroids?
I mean, it's possible. Devs love to reuse what they've created. I'm not sure if we'll see Cave Game in its original form or something different. I think it would surprise me though if it came back.
That was my biggest conviction. Like when I realized how good Cave Game was and how it really kind of drew me back into the love for gaming.
The music.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And how about JMO doing his bass guitar? Like that.
Yeah.
I laughed very hard when I saw that. It's crazy. Thank you, Zaah. Man, it was a blast to have you on. The insights that you provided are just top level. I'm really excited about the future with Wolf Game and InfiniGods. I'm going to dive down that ecosystem a lot deeper. I've been so focused with Wolf Game, but you've provided so much value for not only myself, but the community and all the other Web3 gamers in the space. And we definitely appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you. Those were some very kind words. I'm grateful for you, for bringing me on. I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy.
Thanks, man.
All right, dude. We'll see you. Peace out. Wow. What a journey we've been on with Zaahmbie today. From the world of Wolf Game to the promise of InfiniGods, this episode has been an incredible exploration of the Web3 gaming space. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to see more, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Den. Your support fuels more deep dives into Web3 gaming, so let's keep the momentum going. As always, I'm Digital Optimist, and until our next adventure, keep playing and keep innovating.